I hate? Underwater photography. Well, except for Sea Hunt. I like that. And those I was abducted by aliens and they put a drill through my brain movies, like Fire in the Sky. Well, except for the part where they do put the drill in his brain. That was pretty cool. But I never really go for those. So I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and tonight's movie is Leviathan, the underwater version of Alien that doesn't make a lick of sense, so ask me if I'm happy. You know what makes even less sense? Remember a while ago when the Canadians blew up a decommissioned warship so that it would settle at just exactly the right place on the bottom of the ocean? They wanted it to be right next to the other ships they've already sunk in these waters between Vancouver Island and the mainland of British Columbia. Their plan? To attract tourists. They think that tourists will find out they're sinking these ships and say, Fred, come on, let's go scuba diving there. You know, they think these ships will be fascinating to divers because they can swim around through the various rooms thinking, isn't this cool? I'm doing this under the water. You know, they could have just tied the ships up next to a wharf and said, welcome, Mr. Tourist, walk through the ship. But somebody thought, nah, let's make the tourists work to see this ship. So, I mean, it's one thing when you go to that Sir Francis Drake Channel in the Caribbean where there's like 120 shipwrecks from 200 years ago and they're full of stuff that looks like it could go on the wall at Red Lobster or something, because you dive down there and you go, ooh, there were dead people down here. They didn't even take their halberds with them. And what is a halberd? But if you're diving in the yuppie waters of British Columbia, all you can say is, ooh, here's where the Canadians blew up this destroyer escort because they thought they could make $1,000 off me this weekend. So, I mean, it's not the same experience. It's part of this whole trend toward making modern things look like they're 200 years old. And, you know, you build a hotel in the mountains, but you put wood-burning stoves in the room. You don't use power boats anymore. You learn to sail on your personal teakwood schooner. You know, you buy a brand new jacket out of the J. Peterman catalog only because it looks like the jacket Clark Gable wore in Vienna in 1936. In other words, it's part of this whole retro thing where the whole world is being turned into one giant theme park, isn't it? They didn't have any decent shipwrecks off the coast of Western Canada, so they just, by God, built them some. Okay, speaking of shipwrecks, let's watch Leviathan. Roll it. They at least could have put, you know what they could have done? Put some halberds down there. You know, I was kind of half joking when I said this is the underwater Alien, but while I was watching it just now, I started to realize what a direct ripoff it is. Look at how many direct steals there are. The captain of the Alien ship was Tom Skerritt. The captain of this ship is Peter Weller, same character type, they almost look alike. Sigourney Weaver in Alien, beautiful girl who sometimes goes around in her underwear. Amanda Pays, beautiful girl in her underwear. Ian Holm was the alien medical officer. Here it's Richard Krenna. Yaphet Kotto was the tough black crew member. Here it's Ernie Hudson. Veronica Cartwright was the tough tomboy type in Alien. Here it's Lisa Eilbacher as Bowman. Harry Dean Stanton in Alien as the weird, quirky guy. Here we have Hector Elizondo of Chicago Hope fame, the guy who makes the speech about how much better it is to be living underwater. And actually, there's two weird, quirky guys, because you also have Daniel Stern as Six-Pack. And those diving suits they wear even resemble the spacesuits in Alien. Both films have a scene where the crew is complaining about their shares. Both films are about people on mining expeditions. Both films are being directed by a big company back home that's probably lying to them. And what's the first major plot development in Alien? They land on a weird planet, find an abandoned spaceship. What just happened in this movie? Williams and Six-Pack discovered a strange place on the ocean floor and found an abandoned ship. So what the hell? It's probably all coincidence, right? All right, back after the ads. Wonder what's going to happen next. Want to pass me that Alien script? They're not going to have a mutant bust out of somebody's stomach, are they? They wouldn't go that far, would they?
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.
Okay, thank goodness the sappy, yucky, poorly written love scene is over between Peter Weller and Amanda Pays wearing her perky jogging outfit. This movie was filmed at the famous Cinecittà Studios in Rome on the largest soundstage there, Stage 5, which is almost as big as the biggest stage in Europe, the 007 stage at Pinewood Studios in London. And the reason they needed such a big stage is that all those underwater scenes are not underwater. They did what they call dry for wet, where you fill the stage with a certain kind of smoke that makes everything murky like you're underwater, and then you run the film twice as fast as normal film, so when you play it back, the actors move at half speed. And they also weave the camera a little bit, make it move back and forth slightly the way it does when the camera is mounted on a boat. And in the story, they're supposed to be 10,000 feet down. Well, the ocean 10,000 feet down is pitch black. Now, unfortunately, you cannot film pitch black, so they made it blue-green instead, and they did several tests of it, and they showed the test film to some divers who work underwater a lot, and they fooled them, so they thought it was underwater photography. So it's not that novel a technique, actually. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea did the same thing, Clash of the Titans, the Captain Nemo TV series, even Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Can you imagine? Should have been called Voyage to the Bottom of the Soundstage. Okay, commercials, and then back to Leviathan. And what does Leviathan mean? It means big old sea monster, right? You know what they should have called this movie? Whalien.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.
They're dropping like flies now, aren't they? Daniel Stern is down, Lisa Eilbacher is down, two of the most interesting actors in the cast. But see, they're observing one of the cardinal rules of a horror film: best-looking people die last. And now, remember the scene where Richard Krenna asked the computer what's wrong with Six-Pack, and the computer says, organism of unknown origin? Well, that's a little inside joke referring to the movie Of Unknown Origin, probably the greatest killer rat movie ever made, which also starred Peter Weller, and which was also directed by George Cosmatos, the director of Leviathan. Not to be confused with the 1995 TV movie Unknown Origin without the of, which was, of course, about an undersea mining company. So how confusing is that? Anyhow, Cosmatos is a Greek guy. He started out as an assistant director on big-budget films made in Greece like Exodus and Zorba the Greek, and then he made commercials in the 60s, and then he made a bunch of low-budget European films in the 70s, and his big breakthrough in America was Rambo, starring Sylvester Stallone in 1985, and everybody said, hey, this guy is great. And then the next year he made Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone, and everybody said, well, maybe not. But he is known as a master of action, which we could use a little bit more of when we continue with Leviathan after the ads. Lisa Eilbacher. She's always great with the emotional stuff, you know? Remember her in An Officer and a Gentleman? You know, the feisty little boot camper who had to struggle to get through the obstacle course, and then she finally makes it over the obstacle course. Well, she's dead now.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.
What's going on here? Don't you find this a little hard to follow? The thing went through a steel door, it shorted out the power. They got rid of the Daniel Stern mutant monster, but the arm of it was flopping around. There's that slimy salamander thing that plunged through Michael Carmine's chest. Amanda Pays is jogging again for no reason. And they're doing that extreme tight close-up thing where they just show a little bitty piece of the monster. They never show the whole thing. They copied that from Alien 2. I mean, they copied it from Alien 1, 2. They also copied it from Alien. It's one other thing that they copied from Alien. And from here on out, it's all-out war on the mutant as we continue with Leviathan after the ads. They mainly ripped off Alien, but they didn't stop there. You know, it's kind of a cross between Alien, The Thing, The Abyss, Life Force, Blade Runner, The Fly, Jaws, and Booty Call. Of course, all those movies are derivative of the 1965 Vincent Price flick City Under the Sea, where underwater smugglers who never age live with their gill-man slaves. And whatever happened to gill-man slaves? I could use a good gill-man slave, or gill-woman slave. You know, slither on over here, honey.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.
Well, isn't this a great place for a break? Right where Richard Krenna's chest starts to pulsate. It's not like we don't know what's going to happen, though, is it? Richard Krenna, he's always great. He's one of my favorite actors. He's such a Hollywood veteran. He's acted for, I don't know, about 940 years now. Actually, 8 decades he's been on the screen. Started as a teenager doing radio serials in the 30s. He had a hit TV series in the 50s, Our Miss Brooks. Another one in the 60s, The Real McCoys. He's made a whole slew of great movies like Wait Until Dark, Body Heat, all the Rambo movies. Last 2 things I saw him in are Jade and Sabrina. And but I'm sure he's done something since then. I'm sure he's doing something this year, bringing him into the zeros. Do we have a name for this decade? It's not the zeros. Anyway, somebody let me know. Care of TNT at 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318, or email me at joebob@turner.com. You can also email through the website at tnt.turner.com/joebob. So anyway, Richard Krenna is about the only guy you end up liking in this movie. Or I guess him and Ernie Hudson. Everybody else seems amazingly stupid. So let's do the commercials and get on with it. You know, the alien monster scared the bejesus out of me when I saw that the first time, but this thing is just annoying. Just an annoying monster. All right. Filmed on the famous Stage 5 at Cinecittà Studios in Rome. Quo Vadis, Ben-Hur, Cleopatra, and Leviathan.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.
Okay, this movie's driving me crazy now. What's the deal with this door that's closing? So Ernie Hudson has to hold it open with his brute strength so everybody can get away. Did they mention an automatic door on the ship before now? They keep running down halls and running through doors, but you don't know where any of the halls are or the doors or where they're running to or where the monster is. It is a pretty interesting monster, you know, all those different body parts mutated together, including Daniel Stern's face, my favorite part. And it keeps coming back like Jason, like a combination of Freddy Krueger and a giant octopus. Okay, time for the surprising conclusion of Leviathan after the ads. And they're going to do that alien countdown thing, you know. What I'm wondering is, why was there no lawsuit against this screenplay? I mean, is it just me, or did they just watch Alien 200 times and then copy everything they saw? Because lawsuits work in mysterious ways in Hollywood. Big hit like Alien comes out, and, you know, 20 guys claim the studio ripped off the script that they wrote, and then they spend 3 years in court trying to pinpoint the 5 minutes it sat on the producer's desk. Meanwhile, all the low-budget houses are ripping off Alien 800 different ways. You know, nobody cares. Can you imagine the meeting when they sold Leviathan, you know? It's Alien underwater. Okay, sounds good. And so what happens? Same thing that happens in Alien. Okay, all right, well, how much money do you need? Well, Alien was 20 million. Okay, fine, 20 million, you know. What about inflation? You know,
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and Leviathan after these messages.